Hi, I'm Jac Schaeffer. I'm the creator, head writer, and executive producer of WandaVision. And I'm so delighted to be moderating a conversation with the writers of that super bizarro show. And here they are. I'm going to introduce them one at a time. So we have supervising producer and writer of episode 2, Gretchen Enders. Give a wave. There she is. Producer and co-writer of episode 6, Chuck Hayward. There he is. Executive story editor and co-writer of episodes 5 and 6, Peter Cameron. There he is. Executive story editor and co-writer of episode 5, Mackenzie Dohr. Executive story editor and co-writer of episode 4, Bobak Esfarjani. There he is. Staff writer and writer of episode 8, Donney. Come on down. Staff writer and writer of episode 3 and co-writer of episode 4, McDonnell. And staff writer and writer of episode 7, Cam Squires. Cam, do you professionally, are you Cameron Squires? I feel like I screw that up every time.
Nope, only my mom calls me Cameron at this point in my life.
Oh.
So Cam. You're good.
Okay. So Cameron, my first question for you, no, I'm kidding. No, my first question is for Chuck.
Ooh.
We're starting with Chuck Hayward because I just want to hear Chuck laugh. So, yeah, it's good.
You'll get it.
So Chuck, my first question is the question that I get a lot, and I'm really excited to hear your answer to this. Tell me how you first heard about this project and how you came to be a part of it.
I first heard about this project from this really spunky, cool writer named Jac Schaeffer, who invited me over to her home for dinner to discuss sort of what my ideal writer's room composition would look like. And so I gave her basically headshots of all the people that you see here. And like not literally, but I did the descriptions that I gave her, and the sort of boxes to check are 100% represented by the people there. It was basically just, I'd spent a lot of time in rooms, some that were more healthy and better run than others. And I think she knocked it out of the park with everybody that she chose. And so, yeah, that was the first time I was hearing about it. And I was super duper excited to have gotten in on the ground floor.
And what was it like for you walking into Marvel on the very first day?
It was like a little bit intimidating because it was so like, we had to swipe our badges a couple times to get up there. Like, it's like locked down, man. It's very secure. And I think we had a situation where we didn't normally, when in a writer's room, like you have the writer's room, and then everybody else has their own separate offices where we can go and take care of other stuff. And we did not have that here. We came right in, we sat down, and I think it forced us to bond very quickly, forced us to get to know each other really well. And, we couldn't really sneak off and be isolated. And I think that really coalesced us in a real way. I'm sorry, I should have clarified that the points that I was saying about my ideal writer's room, we were talking about, diversity, of age, of experience, of race, of gender, all that stuff. And then also I was like, I always want to give a writer their break. So always want to put a first time, somebody for whom this will be their first credit. And then what were the other things? Obviously, like no assholes. That kind of went without saying. But yeah, those were, I can't remember the other ones, but those were the main ones. And I think that, she did a great job implementing it.
Yeah, just because Chuck is being so kind to mask my inexperience, I invited Chuck over because I didn't know how to run a room, and I was hoping that he would like sort of whisper the secrets to me. And he described such a perfect utopian vision of a writer's room that I hired. Luckily, he was available. So that worked out great for me and for us, for most of us. Donney, so this was your first staffing job, right?
Correct.
Tell me what you were expecting and what was different about finding yourself in a writer's room in the Marvel complex.
I mean, I don't know what my expectations were. And it's funny because now this room is my expectation, which for better, for worse is, it's a high standard, and it's exciting to think that, all rooms can be this glorious of an experience. But my expectation, I really I really, I had been a writer's PA in a room, so I did have an understanding to a degree of like what a whiteboard was and that lunch happened. I did know about offices, and to Chuck's point, when we got there and it was just like, you guys are in this room and have nowhere to go. I was like, oh, that's different. That's intimate. Like, okay. But it was so egalitarian is the word I would use. I think you, Jac, from the get were very candid and open about your experience in a room, which had been not. And I think for me, that like the head writer was in like a semi-similar position to like me as a baby. I was like, oh, we're the same. But it really just, it felt like everyone was just there to do good work. And I think I probably expected everyone to be super smart and super talented. I think I expected everyone to be super Marvel heads, and not everyone was, and some were. I think I expected it to be grueling, and it wasn't. We famously, I don't know, have had one big, all-nighter? Am I allowed to say that? Okay. It was like, for the most part, like, I think I thought there would be crazy hours, but it was really humane hours, except for one super fun all-nighter. And yeah, I guess the headline is just, it was an amazing first writer's room experience. I am so grateful for it. And I expected, I don't know, I think I expected good things, and then I got the best things. And so that's really nice for me.
We love Laura Donney. So let's talk about the actual show. I'm really excited to get like granular with the people who actually wrote it. It's so exciting. So Gretchen, so your episode 2, we had such a hard time figuring out what the sitcom plot was going to be. Like, we went round and round. A lot of the other ones, like Chuck's with Halloween, we're like, obviously that's Halloween, like trick or treat set pieces, but we had such a hard time landing what that was. And you were amazing and went through so many iterations and so many sort of designs of what the sort of like Westview piece was going to be. Can you talk about that process, and also something that I wasn't aware of, which you guys educated me on, which is the second episode problem, the challenge of you've nailed the pilot, like how do you keep the engine going, and what do you do in your second episode?
Well, I'm sorry that you want to talk granular, because if I could just take a moment and zoom out, just talk big picture real quick, because I think it's hard to imagine a conversation about the show without talking about your leadership in the room. And I think it's important for the hundreds of thousands of people that are watching this right now to know what it was like to work for you. We were all challenged to really up our games because of the example that you set. Like, you weren't going to take any shortcuts. And also the tone you set in the room, because we talked about grief for months, and like it could have been a real bummer, but it was wonderful, and it was cathartic, and it was the best. And it's so that was really hard, but you led from day one with kindness and generosity, but also decisiveness, and you were so confident in your decisions. I've never seen such a big brain and a big heart work in such tandem together. So I know you're a super busy lady, but I think this industry could really benefit from you doing a masterclass in show running, because you're gonna go down as one of the best. Can I get some chirps? Chirp, 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 chirp. Okay. So the talent show. The second episode problem was news to me too, honestly. I was like, oh yeah, this is really hard, because you kind of have to restate the pilot in a way. Like, this is the promise of the show, but we can't really promise you what this show is going to be, because it's going to be changing, and we're setting up this mystery, and not even the main characters know what's going on. So that is doubly difficult. But I think that we decided early on that this was going to be the episode that's going to launch both Wanda and Vision on their little journeys to find themselves in the town, like really plant their flags as we are members of Westview. So so what was the question?
Well, yes, I think that was, we were like, we wanted to be about fitting in. And so
Right.
what is that? Like you had a great thing where it was like a rose competition, like who has the most beautiful rose bushes, which then like is mentioned, like that sort of went into the dialogue. And you had this design about the mean girls of the neighborhood, and and so, that's where Dottie was born and all of that. But like, trying to figure out, I don't even remember when. Does anyone remember when we were like, it's a talent show, it's a talent show? Like it just, we like.
Well, I remember because this is technically the Bewitched episode, but I just watched hours and hours and hours of the Dick Van Dyke Show, and it was like the best time of my life. And every season on the Dick Van Dyke Show, they had a talent show, and it was really just for them to show off their their dancing and singing skills.
Right.
There was never really a story. They were always just rehearsing for the community talent show. So I think that was
the thing. We watched the one where they did that like weird slinky dance.
Yes.
That's right. That's how we did it, was through the right. And
but we were on their separate tracks, but we wanted to get them back together. And it's like,
right.
This is the perfect thing to like get them back together. So they're actually performing together, as opposed to it was going to be a neighborhood watch, and then Wanda's going to do the rose competition. So
right.
This way they like everybody was together. And
it was also, we wanted to, one of our like overarching goals was to see different sides of Vision. And anyone does remember, like we were like, we want to see Vision drunk, essentially. Like we want to see him goofy and altered. So how do we, who came up with gum? Who was that? I can't remember. Does anyone remember if it was theirs?
I want to say Megan.
Was it you, Megan?
Well, it was because you said something about gumming up the works.
So it was me.
It was like gum.
Okay, so it was my idea.
That's another thing about Jac. She takes credit for everybody's work.
No, but that was amazing because Megan will never say it's her idea. Somebody has to out her for being brilliant. So that's pretty good. So I will go to Megan with my question. My question for Megan is, Megan McDonnell, tell us the plot of the Marvels, specifically what happens in the post-credit tag. No? Okay.
Oh, my internet. Yeah.
So Megan, I want to talk about science and WandaVision. For 103 and for 104, you had to research like everything from like human gestation for the pregnancy and all those details, and then like cosmic microwave background radiation for like Darcy and her stuff. I hate research. And you have a way, like research seems to ignite your creativity. Can you talk about your process and like how you were always bringing like all of these little gems and kernels into the room that sparked other ideas?
I think generally I like little kernels of science, and they get away from me where it's like, ooh, this is cool. What if this was like this? And it's like, well, that's not like that, but what if we're in fantasy? The cosmic microwave background radiation was there, I think, from your initial idea, and which is the Big Bang, cosmic microwave background radiation. It's also what you see when you turn on a TV and it's fuzzy is cosmic microwave background radiation. So it's from the beginning was in there, and it's just kind of like, okay, like how do we make that? How do we add on that and add on that and add on that? Whenever I get stuck with story stuff, I look to like, okay, like what if I learned a little more about this, and then kind of ran away with it. Because the boundary, there's no spoiler alert
No.
in this, right? Okay.
Speak for
the boundary, it becomes dangerous. Like, why is it dangerous? What are the effects of the boundary? And it's like, okay, well, if it's full of this radiation, that's what causes this. Okay, there's some electromagnetic spectrum stuff going on because Monica's powers are based in the electromagnetic spectrum. So like, how do those all add up in such a way? I'm not articulating this well, but yes, I what I do is if there's like a zone that we're trying to operate in, I either like just like Google a lot, or I have gotten into taking edX classes or Coursera classes online, and it's like free classes, and you can be like, okay, like I'm gonna learn about exoplanets now. And so that was helpful as far as like, okay, like how do scientists like observe distant planets, and like, okay, red shifting and blue shifting, and like, oh, like that kind of applies, not really, but if we do it this way, we can talk about it as though it applies. And then and then so you figure out all the internal logic science of the thing, and then you put it in there, and then you take it out. But still.
But it's there.
Yeah.
Well, actually, what I think that you do, like hearing you talk about that is really, I don't know, illuminating for me about your process, which is so interesting to me. I think that what you're doing is actually you're using science as a theme. Like you're like, this is a motif. So like, I'm going to get really into this motif on a scientific level, but it's just going to feed the themes and what's really going on in the story. And I think that's fantastic. So good job, Megan.
Thanks.
So Bobak, so the opening of your episode, We Interrupt This Program, is one of the standout moments of the series in that it opens with Monica coming back from the blip. Can you talk about like, you know, the challenge for us of establishing adult Monica and how we get into that episode and how we didn't sort of like derail or sink it or keep the energy going? Like talk to us about like all the paths we went down with that piece.
Well, it's a couple things. I think, first of all, this episode is an example of, you know, Gretchen spoke to your leadership ability just as a person, but story-wise, to have the boldness to wait till the fourth episode to do this. I remember us kind of staring at each other in a vacuum and being like, is 3 episodes of sitcom a lot? Like, we didn't know, but we had confidence in you and had confidence in the structure. And so when it came to this episode, you know, there were a couple things at play. It was like, we had only seen a version of Monica that was essentially a false version. Even though we've seen her on screen for a while, we don't really know her. But then also in this fourth episode, we have a lot of information to get ahead. You know, we're switching the dynamic. We want to backfill a lot of stuff. So we really had just a small window to introduce Monica in a really emotional and empathetic way. And I remember we played around with a lot of like traditional tropes of like, is she working out? Is she training? Is she whatever? But all of them felt a little flat because they weren't really tethered to anything. And then I remember when the blip came up, that felt right because not only did it contextualize like the show, so where we are on the timeline, where we are, you know, within the MCU, but it also directly placed Monica in the most empathetic situation that the MCU has, which is the blip. So we got to live it through her eyes. And then you know, that really sped it up as far as us being on her side. And then from there, we were just kind of rolling because she went to the base, etc.
Yeah, it was so great. It was so fun to do that. Everybody remember Monica's dog? Oh, Monica's dog. She had a dog, everyone, viewers, listeners, there was a dog. But you got to kill your dogs in order to get to the streamlined story. Mackenzie, so I want to talk about the challenges of 105. It's a little bit similar to what we were speaking about with Bobak, but with your episode on a very special episode, at the end of the previous episode, the jig is up. Like we finally get the information. We get this huge download of what's happening and the one is behind it all. We all felt like it was a really big challenge from that moment to like, so what now? What's the new direction? And specifically, like, how are we charting Wanda's arc? And even more difficult, how do we track Vision's awareness of what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, from the beginning, when we started breaking the season, it always felt like my episode was going to be a big turning point, both for Wanda's story, but also for the audience, because it's like we're 3 episodes into sitcom. Episode 4 is we're at the base, and then episode 5 is the first sort of hybrid, and we're seeing both. And so it was a challenge to figure out, okay, now that Wanda knows that she's doing this, how does she keep it going without alerting Vision, who is kind of, you know, connected to her. And, you know, I watched a lot of Family Ties, I watched a lot of Growing Pains, and it was very like, that era especially was very like close family, everybody's together in the same room. And like, I think it was all about just Wanda trying to keep control. And the more that she held on and tried to keep control, the more things went haywire. Like, she couldn't control the twins and they kept aging up. And so it was sort of like this point for her where she's doubling down, and then Vision is like, hey, what's going on? I'm scared. They have that big fight, and like, why are there no children? And she's like, I don't want to hear it. You know, she starts rolling credits. She's like, can't we just be happy? Like, and the audience, I mean, we hope, is sort of on board with her, because we're like, yeah, can't this woman just get some like happiness? And then, it was then with the stuff at the base, trying to balance how we were getting in and out of that, how to balance like Monica's story and the stuff with her dress, and she's gone through the boundary, like a lot had to happen in episode 5. And then she comes out of the hex and has that amazing moment, which literally, like, that was I think in your original pitch,
I don't remember.
Or it was like it was like a week 1 thing where like
it was early.
Yeah, like she's.
Well, we were all like, we were so patting ourselves on the back because we were like, we're gonna have her leave the hex in the middle of the show, like she's gonna walk out, and we were like, well, because she's Wanda Maximoff and she can do whatever she wants.
Yeah.
And we called it, the viewers, we called it the hex flex because we were like, she's just so boss in that moment. Also, fun fact, Mackenzie Dohr named the hex. She came up with that clever name for the hex. So thank you, Mackenzie. I remember in your episode, you like what you're talking about of like Wanda and the control. There were a lot of other like there were things going on with the house, like didn't in an early draft, weren't there a lot of sort of shenanigans in the house as like as a metaphor for her difficulty being keeping in control, which some of that stuff I think got shunted into Cam's episode later on.
Yeah, we did. We went through a bunch of drafts because it was, if something changed on the front half of the show, it had to be, altered. Episode 5 had to be altered, and same back half. So it was kind of like the pivot point. And so there were a lot of drafts, there was a lot of fun because it was like, okay, and now we're going to do, the plumbing is going haywire. And they were like, at one point, all the neighborhood people were coming over. Dottie was going to lead like an exercise class. Like there was going to be like a lot of stuff going on that she was
which is why Catherine's in her jazzercise.
Yes.
That was and wasn't there a band? Didn't they like bring a band?
There was a band.
It was about like more chaos in the house. Yeah,
like Phil had a band, and it was all to like distract Vision from what was happening, because Vision was like, this is a little weird, and one was like, everything's great. Oh no, they just Agatha happened to come over, and whoops. And we kept a little bit of that, and with the twins and Sparky, speaking of killing dogs. But yeah, we went through a lot of different drafts, and it just sort of ended up being this perfect, I wouldn't call my own writing perfect, but it ended up working really well for what we needed for her going forward, for her story and vision. And so Peter, I think it was a priority of mine, and I think you guys, everybody was really on board with like the delicious opportunity of seeing 2 superheroes have like a proper marital argument. And what's different about 2 superheroes, they're going to levitate. Like what is that going to be like? And that was your scene. You did a phenomenal job with it. Can you talk about your approach and how you crafted it?
I remember I wrote the first draft of it without any superhero elements in there, just to help my simple brain focus on everything that was grounded about it. And so really just trying to boil it down to, she doesn't want to engage with her husband on a really touchy subject, and he's hell-bent on trying to. And I guess like any argument in any meaningful relationship, all the other sidelined issues end up just getting piled on to what's actually being discussed. And so that was my first run at it. And then going back through it, I realized that the pivot points seemed to be where to infuse the superhero-ness back into it. Like instead of slamming a door on Vision, Wanda can just roll credits on him. And instead of pounding a fist on a table or whatever, Vision can levitate. The piece that you told me about that is my favorite bit is something that Paul Bettany added, right? When Vision actually says that he's scared.
That was Paul's idea.
I love that. I thought that was so cool that he'd be vulnerable like that. And
he was he came to me and he said, because he's very respectful and wonderful and doesn't alter things without discussing it with his partners, his collaborators. And he came to me and he said, I'd really like to say I'm scared here. And I was like, yeah, I mean, if that's what you're feeling. And he, like, it was for him. And the way he always accesses Vision is through vulnerability and emotion. So I didn't know that you loved that. That's really nice to hear.
I love that. I just like the honesty that you'd have in a loving relationship, like the courage to send up a flare like that as a wake-up call to you and the other person and yourselves as a couple, I think I thought it was beautiful. Yeah.
That's nice.
Just kidding. Paul shouldn't have done that. And
that was
word is law.
Yeah, stick to the script, buddy. So Cam, so your episode, Breaking the Fourth Wall, it was pretty early on because we were mapping the series to the stages of grief, which is reductive, but was helpful. It was helpful for me when I was pitching. And then I think we, in our exploration of grief, it just, and then it was pipe up if you disagree, but it just, I don't know, it helped us with sort of the benchmarks of Wanda's arc. And so we knew that your episode was going to be the depression episode, which very neatly aligned with the confessional and mockumentary style of that type of sitcom. But I mean, it was a real challenge. It was a real trick to balance the tone of that. And that opening scene, like the opening sort of like the back and forth between the confessionals and the upstairs and the downstairs and her in the living room is pretty similar to your like earliest draft. So can you talk about your approach to that challenge?
Well, yeah, I think it was helpful that it's one of the few mediums that we had where characters could actually just tell the camera exactly how they were feeling. So in some ways it's simple, you know, but I also think obviously everyone has given Jack so many compliments, and I'm just going to add to them because I think you gave me a pretty great North Star. It was an episode of The Office that I can't remember what it's called, but it's one particular talking head where, you know, Pam is like trying to kind of like smile and nod and laugh and be happy, and then just slowly breaks down in the middle of trying to be happy and just starts crying. And then we kind of cut away. And with that being sort of like the North Star of being able to mix the tone and watch it even change in the middle of one of the talking heads, helped me a ton. So once I kind of had that, then it was, you know, realizing that all of Wanda's powers were going to be, you know, the culprit for this anyway. So if I could kind of bring anything back to her powers, both the hijinks, you know, that were happening, but also Vision's, you know, realization with Darcy, you know, because those are also, you know, rooted in Wanda's powers. So being able to bring all of that stuff kind of back and then have Wanda, you know, look at the camera and say, I'm fine. I feel like just helped me a lot to be able to say, okay, I have a lot of range. I can get as sad, you know, as Pam gets there, or I can get as, you know, goofy as, you know, Michael Scott does, you know, in the very cold open of an episode of The Office.
That I'm fine. I remember seeing it on the page and being like, because I think I tend to overwrite a little bit, and I saw that and it was just like, I'm fine, and I was like, I don't know what's gonna happen with that. And I was like, I'll just leave that in there and see what goes down with that. And Lizzie just like lived in it. Like, I think as an actor, she got to carve out each find in her own way. And I don't know, I feel like I learned a lot in that. The sort of the trust of the trust of you, the writer, and then the trust of the performer. I was like, I will stand back on that one. So Laura Donney, so your episode previously on, you know, it's arguably the most emotional episode. There's a lot to it that's gotten so much attention. Something that I haven't spoken about, like that no one's asked me about in interviews, and I feel like it hasn't really been unpacked to the degree that I want it unpacked, is the opening, Agatha's origin story. Like what we're sort of being like, what's the root of this lady? And that scene went through so many iterations. And we were balancing the Marvel needs and with the sort of our character goals. Can you talk a bit about that process?
Yeah. So I think like it makes sense that there were a lot of iterations because this was like a huge responsibility and opportunity, because not only are we introducing Agatha to the MCU to the MCU as a whole, we're also like trying to showcase exactly why you met Agatha, you, the audience, met Agatha when you're meeting Agatha in present time and why she is the way she is. So it was sort of a double whammy of like, here's this person whole cloth, and also here's why she is pursuing Wanda so hard. And I think that early on, it's funny, this episode was another opportunity. I think 104, we got to start in a way at the hospital with Monica, where we were like, where aren't we? And I think, Jac, you always felt this was another opportunity to be like, where are we again? Like, because we're not in the Hex or the sitcom, we're not at the base, and sort of like,
we're in the past.
well,
That
and
was
also
really
like
exciting.
a spooky forest, and like, who does this forest belong to? Are we in
What year is it?
Sokovia?
What-
Yeah.
Mhm.
Where are the lights?
Right.
And so I think that always really grounded me with how much freedom there was in this. We could do anything we wanted with Agatha. And I think early on, we always knew we loved the idea of a witch trial, and everyone's complimenting you, and I will too, which is that you're great. That's it. No, I think there were a lot of times where you had like an intuition, and then we would worry that it was like too obvious and too intuitive. And then we'd be like, no, it's your intuition for a reason. So meeting Agatha at a witch trial was like a chef's kiss early on. And so I think what changed though was sort of like, who's on trial? Who's doing the trying? What year are we exactly in? And so that stuff changed. Agatha's age changed. When we met her changed. We lovingly had a version of Agatha that we called baby Agatha, who was closer to the age that Wanda experienced her trauma. We liked that symmetry. But I think ultimately our priorities were to understand why Agatha is the way she is. And we really wanted to look at her source pain for that. And I think we always knew that no matter what was going on, we needed to understand her trauma. This woman who she's been in the periphery the whole show, and now she finally can be center stage. So while Wanda has her own kind of abandonment from her mother, Agatha was an opportunity to look at a different kind of abandonment and to see how that shapes people differently. And I think it just was always really delicious to give Agatha a really clean and clear reason of why she is bad. And I think creating a scene where your mother and your coven is telling you you're bad and that's all you are, you're going to be like, guess I'm bad, and guess I'm going to be the best at it. And that was sort of the engine that took us all the way through.
You make it sound so easy. It was really fun to go through all those different, I mean, you had a lot of patience with it, which I really appreciated. And Baby Agatha was so sweet, but then it was like, you cast Catherine Hahn, then you put Catherine Hahn in all the scenes that Catherine Hahn is supposed to be in.
And while I thought she could play a baby, everybody was like,
well,
no, but
yeah.
I do, to your point, I do think that like writing Baby Agatha as a child, like actually really helped get to the emotional core.
Like fueled
because guess
it,
what? When your mom wants to kill you at any age, that hurts. So it was really grounding as far as getting to that raw, the raw pain.
Yeah. So Chuck, so I want to talk about sort of bigger picture stuff. So you have written features, you've been on episodic multi-season shows. This is a limited series. Talk to me about the differences, the challenges with a limited series, and what do you love about the limited series, and what are the other limited series out there that you're into?
Well, I'll answer that. It's a bunch of questions. I'm going to start with the last one. Mayor of Easttown. We've all discussed that in great detail. That's been one of my favorite ones as of late. And I think that the cool thing about limited series that I found that that in regular series you don't have it. You see that there's a sort of the finite nature of it makes you put everything on the field. Like you leave it all on the field. There's no, oh, maybe that's a season 2 thing, maybe that's a season 3 thing or whatever. So all your best stuff has to be on display. And I think you motivated us really well to like bring that out. And you guys taught me a different way to write. I've always, like, in those other rooms that I've been in, it's like the most economical word choices, because you just have to kind of keep the story moving. But like, just the ability to be able to, like, we called it petering it up a little bit, like the ability to like use some flourish in our language and really like explore and create a visual idea. Like, that's something that for me I'd never experienced before, and it was super cool. Wait, since we're on the complimenting Jac tip, I do have to add a couple things in there for society. She, I told you, I've known her for 10 years or so. And I think we were a month and a half in before anyone knew that. I think they were like, wait, you guys know each other?
Is that true?
So, yeah, that's totally true. And I think that
absolutely true.
It speaks to your ability to not play favorites and to be super duper equitable with the way you treat everyone. And then
But
the
who
other
is your
thing,
favorite?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
yes, yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll get at the end. You have a moment to think about who your favorite is. And I also, speaking of economy, this is one of the shortest rooms we've ever been in terms of like the daily. Like, we were in at a certain hour, out at a certain hour, and except for that one late night we had. I mean, it just goes to show you that a lot of rooms waste a lot of time. Like, this was a great example for me as a future showrunner of how you can still have fun, but keep on target, keep on path, and still make everyone feel heard. So yeah, that doesn't answer your question, but I had to give you your flowers. So like, yeah, I would say that the limited series portion of it is just, it's the ability to know that there's an end in sight, and so making sure that you're putting your best foot forward in all those situations. And also just the oddity of the genre shifts. I think that's this limited series in particular. When will you ever get a chance to work on a show where you're actually working on like 4 or 5 different shows within the show? So I think that was intimidating at first, but I think really liberating and exciting, and definitely set like the bar pretty high for things moving forward.
I love that that you don't anything on the table. Wait, what? Chuck, more? Go.
No, I was going to say, it is, somebody said in the chat, how is it different from features? It is in feature, it's similar to features in that way, where you do have more of a finite sort of thing, and you have to make sure you put everything on the field. I would say it's just a long feature. I think we discussed it as sort of like a couple of movies back to back, and that's the way we approached it when we were conceiving of it and writing it. So I think like it's just you get a chance to write this whole story, and you don't have to stop at 100 pages. So.
I am not looking at the chat, guys. Is there anything I need to know? Who's looking at the chat? Anybody need to tell me anything?
They want to know about this late night.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Who wants to talk about the late night? How would you describe it?
I want Bobak too.
I remember it as a fever dream. Yeah, Bobak. What happened? What did we do?
I blacked out after 8 p.m. So I don't remember. It was a night of bonding. It was like going to summer camp, but all in one night.
I think we had the like concept doc, like essentially the Bible due, right? And so everybody had done their outlines, and I was in my office, and Laura Monty Wonderfulness was like ferrying you guys back and forth. Like I was right. And you would come in and sit with me, and I would give you assignments, and then you would scurry back. And I partnered you, right? You guys, like, I was like, you work with you, go. And I was like really mean about it all.
You're being
there was one moment where you was like, okay guys, I got it from here.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say.
And we're like, we're not leaving. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
We're not going anywhere, lady. Shut up. Go back to your office.
I was like, I made a pact with myself that I would never make any, like we wouldn't have any all-nighters. Like I was like, I'm gonna be the one. And then, but then you guys seem to want to stay there all night long and eat weird snacks.
Yeah, but I also remember you texted me separately because I hated summer camp, and I would always go home in the middle of sleepovers. And I feel like you saw that all on my face, and you were like, Laura, Donnie, like if you like you can go, like, and I was like, Donnie, this is the moment. And I was like, you don't go. But it was all just really feverish. And we played like some game like Megan. I don't like. There was just like a game with the alphabet we played.
It was
Wasn't that when Chuck yelled Cars.
Yes, it was Peter Cameron said Cars.
Oh,
It was, we just at a certain point, I think around like 2 a.m. we were just laughing at everything. Everything was like so funny. And so we were playing a game. It was just like, let's go around and see how many movies we can name, you know, in the alphabet A, B, C. And it was like round 20. And Peter was like, oh, Cars, the movie Cars. And Chuck was like, oh my God, man, nice. You did it. And we all just died. Like, for some reason, that was the funniest thing.
Well, that's when Peter and Cam fell in love, and their bond will last forever. So I wasn't there for it. I heard about the Cars thing.
Yeah, it was Cameron Corner.
Yeah, we
Special.
Cameron Corner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, guys, we got to
There's
get back.
that song.
Wait, the song. I'm going to make you sing the song. We'll get to that. I know. Look at Laura. Laura's like, oh, gotta go.
I'm like, let me get to the piano.
Yeah. Oh, does someone have a piano? Wait. So okay, back to real questions. So Bobak, I want to talk about breaking story. So that was the thing for me. That was one of the things I was most nervous about, is like starting this room of like how do you break story, and like specifically something like this with like intense, dense mythology. And one of the reasons I hired Bobak was his extensive work on Manifest and like his understanding of like puzzles, like the mystery building, the world building, the mythology. And Bobak, you really kept us on task a lot with how to like keep our brains wrapped around the whole thing. So what, like, do you have an approach? How would you outline the priorities of like attacking a show that is a puzzle, it is mythology, it is world building, but still needs an emotional center to it?
I think like life, mythology is the most fun when there's a lot of strict rules. And for me, I think, like I'm always inspired by a show like Handmaids, where the rules of the world are literally color coded. So the stakes and the drama feel that much more, because you're like, the person wearing red is in the blue area. That's bad. And because they spend a lot of time establishing that, then you can kind of sink into the drama. And I think for us, it was like, we have this hex that could do anything, but really, breaking our brains to figure out not only the kind of rules of what it could do, but what could it do that could completely accentuate and magnify and allow for the largest runway for Wanda to execute her theme. So everything that she was able to do with the hex, whether transforming bad people, into the carnival, like that was just a thing we did. That didn't have to happen. But like that was a way to reflect back on her internal theme. So everything kind of, no matter how big and broad it gets, for me, I think it's fun where all of it is a reflection or like a growth from, the main characters, the two main characters, like internal needs and theme.
Yeah, that. Also, you were the one who was like, we need a villain. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like, it's about grief. Grief's the villain. I don't know if we need a villain. And you were like, yeah, we need a villain. I'm like, well, but do we need a villain? Yeah. So we got two.
I was raised on comic books, so I knew we need a villain.
Chuck has something to say.
Can I? I need to add another compliment to that. And insofar as like Bobak was the guy to keep us on track in terms of the mythology, you were very intentional about making sure that we weren't showing a female character who was overwhelmed by her powers or didn't like understand, or like, we wanted to show somebody who was standing in her power and whose issue was with grief. And I think we did a really great job. Really pat ourselves on the back. I think we did a great job of not presenting this female character who needs help from some male character. And I think that you probably set the standard to make sure that that's what is happening moving forward in these kind of things. So appreciated that.
That's really nice. Shout out to co-executive producer Mary Lavanos, who really, she and I held hands early on and made a commitment that we wouldn't fall into the hysterical woman tropes, and she always was so committed to a fully realized, multi-dimensional portrayal of Wanda Maximoff. So we love ourselves some Mary Lavanos. Okay, so we're gonna have to go to questions, but before we do that, we're gonna have a lightning round. Everybody take yourselves off mute. And Gretchen, do you have a pen and paper handy?
You can tell I'm so competitive. I'm like, I'm ready.
Oh, it's not a competition, but we can pretend it is. Do you have a pen and paper?
I do.
Okay, great. Okay, so everyone just yell out the answer. Who is most likely to disappear into an alternate dimension under the conference table?
Megan.
Megan, of course.
Yeah. Who likes fire?
Go back.
Who's afraid of butterflies?
Mackenzie.
Who looks good in shorts?
Scott.
Who's the craftiest crafter at the craft table?
Gretchen Anders.
Who does the best impression of Vision?
Peter Cameron.
Who thinks he's bad at joke punches but is actually really great at them?
Cameron.
Cameron. Cam Squires.
Cam. I didn't know you thought you were bad at that.
Yeah, like you made him sweat every time.
Yeah. And then he would be like, ring.
And then like you would audition the jokes and it would like be Cam's that won. Like he was so good at it.
And then he also, his first draft of his script was incredible and super funny. So
No,
like,
I know he's hilarious. I just didn't know he didn't know he was hilarious.
Oh.
You guys,
thought
he's
it was a
right
hustle.
there.
Please don't talk about him like he's not here. Who pretended she didn't know who Pietro was so she wouldn't tip off her devoted MCU fanboy of her brother? Donnie. Gretchen, draw the best way to enter the hex given any materials available.
Oh my God.
yes. I love this.
While she does that, everybody sing the song. Go, Cam. No.
1, 2, 3. Am I sad?
Am I sad?
Am I
lonely?
Yeah.
Am I mom?
Am I dad? They don't know me. Yeah.
And there's no
Bagel
bagel
Bites.
bites. Not sponsored by Bagel Bites.
Freezer.
And I'm hungry
hungry
tonight.
There's
There was another verse that I can't remember.
That was great. So guys, listeners, I made them all come up. There it is. There it is. Megan, explain what that is. Explain what that is, Megan.
Okay. So that's a way of we're brainstorming how to get into the hex with a boundary. And it's a cathode ray tube from an old TV, but it's super size. And that's Monica inside, like it's a hamster wheel, and she's gonna like push her way through the boundary in a cathode ray tube.
It worked.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know why they had to
it
go with
worked.
the cool space rover when we had the hamster wheel cathode ray tube. That was
This is
The
another
winner.
opportunity. Jack created this environment where you could like pitch ideas that are a little bonkers, and she'd be like, absolutely not to that, but like keep them coming in a way that was so warm and so nice and made it so much fun.
Absolutely not.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. All right,
That
all right.
drawing was on the whiteboard like the whole
The
time.
whole
The whole
time.
It was so good.
Yeah.
It stayed.
Okay, here we go. So we're gonna move to the Q&A. Sorry, this is where I hit the wall of technical abilities. Do I just start at the top?
You can skim and see what
Whatever
you
one.
like.
Which ones do you like?
I'm gonna
Pick a name you like. Or scroll. Wait, Jack, scroll and we'll say stop.
oh, can you see what I'm doing?
No, but I assume
This
you're
is terrible
scrolling.
This is kind of so Roseanne Welsh, she says, what part of your own voices came through the prescribed voices of the pre-existing characters? That's just like, I'm going to interpret that question because I don't entirely understand it, but I feel like it has to do with like writing for a franchise and writing for inherited characters. Does anyone want to speak to that?
Sure.
Megan? Oh no, Mackenzie said yes. Go Mackenzie.
Well, and this was someone else had this question about people who were not Marvel heads coming into the room, and I definitely was not. I had seen, Iron Man and a couple others, but I wasn't familiar with the comics. I wasn't familiar with the movies, but I really loved the idea that Jack pitched. And I love the idea of like old TV shows. And I had also written on the show Lock and Key for Netflix, which is also based on a comic series. And so I think it's great having existing IP. It's great having these characters. But what was so wonderful about Wanda and Vision, especially, was that we've seen them in the MCU, but we've never seen them like this on their own, in their own little bubble. and being able to play with who they were. I mean, Lizzie doesn't have an accent for, you know, most of the show. She's doing something completely different, and Vision is like a human man. And so that was really fun. Like, we took, you know, we sort of interpreted them, and we took obviously inspiration, but it was kind of like a new ball game. And so it was a great mix of that.
Yes, well said. This is fun. Everybody answer one at a time. Which character did you have the most fun writing for? Gretchen.
Darcy.
Mackenzie.
I would say probably Jimmy Woo.
Bobak.
Monica.
Nice. I wouldn't have guessed that. That's nice. Donnie.
Agatha.
Yeah. Megan.
Vision.
Who?
Vision.
Vision. Oh. Chuck.
It's a toss up. Definitely Darcy for the smartassness, but Jimmy got me. I could use all my dad jokes, which I normally get made fun of for by my boyfriend, but they work in this setting.
Peter.
Jimmy Woo.
Jimmy Woo. Jimmy, what's Jimmy's middle name? Actually, don't say that out loud. It's a nice thing. We shouldn't disclose. Cam.
Agatha.
Wow. Like Agatha, nosy neighbor Agatha? Because you didn't write real Agatha, like villain Agatha. You wrote nosy neighbor Agatha. Well,
I feel like I got a mix. I feel like I got
the end.
She could be funny, but also scheming. Yeah.
That's so fun.
What about you, Jack?
Oh, weirdly, I think Wanda. It was like she was the hardest to write. In the beginning, and then once I got to know Lizzie, it became really satisfying to write for her, because Lizzie is such a dedicated performer, and just like it all has to make sense for her. So I got good at sort of writing for Lizzie through the lens of Wanda, and it was really satisfying. Thanks. This is a question. How does it feel to write grief? Who wants to answer that?
I will. I just to say it's cathartic to write grief. Like I said, I'm used to doing straight up comedy, so this was a departure for me. And Jack brought in a grief specialist to sort of give us a tutorial, like a real like top to bottom example of how grief can be, how it can be experienced, how it can manifest itself in different ways. So she took it so seriously that it made the process of writing about the grief, I feel like all of us were able to sort of overcome some sort of grief that we had. And then I hadn't read the script for that last episode, so that amazing line, what is grief if not love persevering, which was correct me if I'm wrong, Jack, a collabo between you and Laura Donney and Laura Monti, right?
And Laura Monti. Yeah.
Yes, that actually helped me to reframe grief in my brain, and to have to find the silver lining in something that can be really dark and really painful. And I was like, I did not expect to have that out of this experience. And I'm forever grateful. It literally changed the way I process grief.
That's really nice. Does anyone else want to speak to that question?
I'll say one kind of quick thing. But I feel like it was particularly cathartic because we could do it in sitcoms and in comedy. So like being able to still, inherently find that silver lining in something that is, very relatable and like traumatic, but being able to like find a way to not only make people laugh, but by the end of it, have them say like, but I get it, and like there is this kind of like roller coaster that you go through, and like there are still laughs along the way, but there are tears along the way. So like it is this kind of rough none of us are Wanda Maximoff can alter reality, but like I think when Monica does say like I'd probably do the same thing, I think by the end of it we all can relate to that.
And I think that's why we got close so fast, because it was I think 15 minutes into the first Monday we were talking story, and I was like, okay, what's your name? But we were all talking about our own grief like in the first couple days, and to be that vulnerable with other people. I mean, we're all lucky enough to be in writers' rooms, which is a very vulnerable place anyway, but this one was particularly vulnerable. And I think that that's why we were able to work at such a high level, because we all trusted each other so much from so early on.
That first day, the advice I got from my friends and colleagues about how to run a room for beginners, for dummies. One of the pieces of advice was like, the first day is a wash. Like the first day, you just like, you're getting to know each other, like keep it relaxed, like say what the expectations are and what the schedule is going to be, like be clear, all that. But then like, it's just to get to know each other. And so I like had my whole preamble and I got through it in like 3 minutes. And then we were into story. Like I looked at you guys were like good, like I looked at Bobak and I was like, this man wants to talk story. I think I was like up at the whiteboard, like by like minute 8. You guys were ready. It was great. Okay, Jacob Appel says, any tips for young screenwriters? I love this question. I would love to hear what you guys have to say for young writers.
Well, please.
I'm younger, so I'm gonna go Bobak. No, I was just gonna make it really quick. That one sort of thing I say that I did and that I think is wise if you can do it is say yes. Like early on, say yes as often as you can, obviously without putting yourself in any kind of weird or bad situation. Say yes, and then start to say no. Because both of those things are gonna get you to where you probably want to be.
I would say in our business, young writers and writers trying to break in is always kind of blended into one thing. So I'm going to not blend it and just say, if you're a younger writer, wherever you are, just always remember that your next script is going to be better than what you already wrote. So always keep chasing that carrot, because don't judge yourself on what you have now, because the next thing you have will be better.
Oh my gosh, so positive.
Yeah.
Peter, I want to hear what you have to say, because I know you don't want to talk, so I'm going to make you talk.
I would say writing is so personal. Try not to put feedback and notes into the same bucket as your self-worth. They're two separate things. I think when you're writing, I think courage is just so important on the page and off of it. As far as I know that, like most writers, it's so important to process things, and you can do it on the page. It takes courage to do that, and it takes time to do that, but you get better at it. And off of the page, once you make sure that your work is as bulletproof as you possibly know how to make it, have the courage to show somebody. It took me a very, very long time to show anybody anything I had written. And I should have.
That's so nice. Anybody else? Anybody else on this one?
Yeah, I was just noticing in the chat, somebody was, they were saying we should specify emerging writers, because not all emerging writers are younger. And I do think that that does put you in a little bit of an advantage in certain ways. If you are an older writer who is still emerging, you have more lived experience, you have more things to draw from, you've seen more shit. And so that's gonna make your writing a lot richer and a lot more probably nuanced. And so I think just encouraging you to, no matter what age you are, really mine your experiences. Really, like, I'll do this thing where like I'll flip through my photo albums and just remember where I was at that time, what the relationships were between that person and what the drama was and what the comedy was. And like we don't give ourselves credit, I think, for as much, for the amount of experiences that we have and how much story can be mined from it. And it also just keeps you so much closer to the material. And then I would also say to Bobak's point, yes, keep writing, keep cranking out the new things. Not only does it get better, but it gets easier. And that's one thing that I've learned, like every script you write, it gets easier and easier before you know it, you're just like, oh, this is fun. I just get to, play around on it. It's a 10,000 hours thing. Also, don't go to the bars 3 nights in a row. Stay home and write sometimes. Took me a long time to learn that. I was out there in them streets. Yes, it's good to have experiences and then write about them, but it's also very important that you sit home and write.
Okay, so next panel we'll be talking about Chuck out in them streets. But for now, we have to wrap it up. I want to give a shout out to our writer's assistant, Clay LaPerry, who's wonderful and was an enormous part of our room. My assistant, Laura Monti, but we've spoken about many times. And of course, again, Mary Lavanos, all the Marvel folks, the man himself, Kevin Feige. I love this room madly. These people are incredible. Anyone watching who has their paths crossed with these people, you're lucky, lucky, lucky. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
And find yourself a Jac. She's great. Very supportive.
Work with
Get yourself a Jac.